Welcome to Journalism 47 Colloquium. I am Farhana Hakimi. I'm going to be your moderator for today. I hope you guys are doing fine and have had your breakfast. Please be energetic as we are going to deliver a lot of valuable points from both of our speakers today. Before that, to remind you participants that registration form will be provided in the chat box in the middle of the talk session. Kindly be patient. Thank you. Good day and a very warm welcome to Course Coordinator and Project Advisor, Madam Azinawati Nainun, members of the Malaysian Forest Fund, MFF, our collaborators, coordinators, beloved lecturers, fellow journalism and university peers, and to our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Farhan Hakimi. I will be your moderator for today's session, the second episode of 47 Journalism e-Colloquium hosted to you by the final year journalism students of UiTM Shah Alam. In our previous session, we have discussed the topic of climate change. What is the role of media? Now, as we are venturing into the episode 2 of e-Colloquium talk session, we are going to discuss environmental issues and the role of non-governmental organizations, NGOs. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin our talk session today, now let us hear a few words from the 47 Journalism e-Colloquium project leader, Daniel Iskandar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah and good morning to all. Greetings to the course coordinator of journalism program of Faculty Communication and Media Studies and project advisor 47 Colloquium, Puan Azinawati Ngainon, our main collaborator Malaysia Forest Fund, panel of speakers, board member of Malaysia Forest Fund yang berbahagia Dato Suki, head of corporate sustainability Jensen Holdings Berhad, Dr. Renard Siew, respected lecturers, and to all students. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to all of you as we gather here today to attend the 47 Journalism Colloquium with the theme, The Role of Media in Environmental Sustainability, conducted by final year journalism students. Today on episode 2, we will shed light on the topic of utmost importance, environmental issue and the role of NGO. It is an honor to have such a distinguished audience present, comprising individuals who share a common concern for our planet's well-being. For your information, last week on first episode of 47 e-Colloquium, we were already discussing the topic of climate change. What is the role of the media? We see that the media plays the role of advocating about climate change to all the public. But right now, the media alone is not enough to help combat the environmental issue occurring nowadays. This concern needs immediate attention and collaborative efforts from all sectors of society. Thus, we believe that the non-governmental organization, NGOs, plays a critical role in resolving and addressing environmental issues. Today, we have the privilege of discussing this critical subject, exploring environmental issue and how NGOs are at the forefront of environmental activism, advocating for sustainable practices, raising awareness, and also implementing solutions that result in a good change. Throughout the course of this event, we will hear from esteemed experts and NGOs who will share their insights and experiences. We aim to gain a deeper understanding of how we can contribute to fostering a sustainable future for generations to come. Let us seize this occasion to engage in meaningful dialogue, exchange ideas, and develop a novel mission to protect our planet. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speaker and dedicated organizing committee who have made this event possible. May our discussion today pave the way for a future where we embrace our shared responsibility and work hand in hand towards a greener, healthier, and more sustainable world. Thank you to each and every one of you for attending this event, and let the event begin.
I want to take a moment to express our sincere appreciation to everyone that attended our event today. Your presence has certainly made this event a wonderful one. I hope you guys will be enlightened on the topic that will be scrutinized and discussed by both of our speakers today. I would like to also take this opportunity to thank and express our sincere appreciation to DBROG and Floria Puchong for sponsoring this event. Thank you for being a part of this wonderful event. Now, before I begin, as many of you are informed, we are going to have both of our speakers today who will enlighten you guys on the topic environmental issues and the role of NGOs. Let me introduce both of our speakers today. For our first speaker, Dr. Renard Siew, he is a sustainability and climate change specialist. He was also the co-chair of the Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management Working Committee and UNEPFI's collective commitment on climate action. In 2020, he was appointed as an SDG Champion Climate Action by the World Economic Forum WEF. He is also a member of WEF Expert Network Group and serves on WEF Global Future Council on SDG investment. He was accepted into the Forbes Fellowship Program and attended the inaugural UN Climate Action Summit in New York. Dr. Renard is also a part of the facilitation team at the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership, CISL. It is my pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, a renowned expert in his field, who is a member of the Malaysia Forest Fund MFF Board of Directors. He is also a Naib President of Persatuan Pembangunan Orang Asli, MODA. And he is a registered town planner and the pengerusi of Persatuan Orang Asli Perak, POAP. Please welcome Dato Yang Berbahagia Suki. Now, as we are venturing into the episode 2 of this e-Colloquium talk session, we are going to scrutinize the topic of environmental issues and the role of NGOs. Now, as many of you are aware, NGOs are one of those important stakeholders when it comes to championing, environmental related policies such as climate change adaptation plan, flood mitigation plan, and they are the ones who are responsible for influencing people to, advocate for these environmental issues. Now, I would like to know for the first session, I am quite intrigued to know how Dr. Renard Siew, sparked your interest in the environmental field, because many of us are aware that it is not something that we were born with. It's not like something that we have instilled from a very young age. So there must be, some sort of events that triggered you to involve in the environmental field. So perhaps you could share what made you intrigued to involve or engage in environmental advocacy.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Daniel, and thank you so much for the organizing team for inviting me for the second episode. Just in summary, to share a little bit about my story, I grew up in Kuantan along the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, actually in a very small fishing village. And, just growing up, as a kid, right, I've basically witnessed, I've also experienced, some of the worst floods, in our area. So, we have had to evacuate, right, so many times to different school halls. And every year, right, it happens during the monsoon season, and it just seems to be getting worse, all the time. And, when you are in that situation, like where, you have to flee for your life, you pack very little, you see a lot of your properties, goods, right, getting destroyed, right, by such catastrophic events. I suppose you grew up questioning, right, saying, why are all of this extreme weather events happening so frequently? And, one thing led to another as you grow up, as an adult, I went to university and I started realizing that, hey, actually extreme weather events, right, doesn't just cover floods, right? It's also droughts, forest fires, and a lot of that engagement that I had with some of my other colleagues and peers was really an eye-opening experience for me, realizing that, if we don't stop doing, right, the right things, it's just going to get worse, like such catastrophic events. And you're talking about livelihoods, right, getting disrupted. I think, which I think is very important. Like people are dying, right, as a result of this. And then comes, like economic disruptions, even for businesses. Their whole supply chains are being disrupted with the increasing extreme events that are happening as we can see. and this results in economic losses in the range of billions, right? But I think it's important to realize that this is not a story that we experience alone, right? It's also an interconnected story across the globe, right? With issues that have been highlighted in the media, especially on the climate crisis that has been happening. So I think one thing led to another, and I started realizing that while I may not be able to solve everything, like all of the issues in the world, but I do want to be able to make a difference, right? With what I'm able to, like control, which is through advocacy, right? Like by highlighting to, like people that I'm in contact with, like what are the impacts to tell my story, right, to the public, so that it would inspire perhaps even just one person, right, to be able to say that, hey, I want to be, embarking on this journey as well. Then for me, I feel like my job is done to a certain extent. So it's just trying to nudge people into the right direction and to do the right thing.
Okay, sure. So that this is something that is really personal to you, as you yourself have experienced it, right? So, but there are also groups of people out there who are not really interested to engage in such topic, and they might say things like this is merely an act of God. It happens naturally. There's nothing we can do. Even so, if we advocate for it, there's nothing much we could change. Because eventually it will happen. As an environmentalist, do you agree with that statement, or do you think that human actions are actually, or humans are actually responsible for what happened to our nature today?
Yeah, I mean, growing up as a kid, right, that was also one of the like theories that I've heard very often, right? As I was questioning why are we experiencing all of this, like floods so frequently, right? And to be honest, like I also lost a friend as a result of that. And a lot of people, the adults around me, were just telling me that, oh, this is an act of God. There's nothing much that you can do, which was what sparked my, curiosity to, want to go and investigate and find out, what's really behind this. If you have been reading the IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, right, which is a collection of scientific evidence, right, from some of our world's best scientists, you can see that, a large majority of them actually agree that the cause of the climate crisis.
Doctor, we couldn't listen to you.
Anthropogenic or human-based factors.
Okay, now
yeah.
Okay.
So, in other words, like human beings are basically responsible for some of this extreme events that we are seeing for ourselves, and that we are the only ones who can actually stop this. We have an opportunity to make the world a better place, and a lot of this come not just through our own thoughts, right, but the actions that we take on the ground. And I think that's where we really need to start focusing on.
Right, I agree with Doctor. I think apart from NGOs, I think humans are one of the most important stakeholders to be responsible towards what happened to our nature. Now, I would like to hand over this floor to Dato Suki. Now, we all know that MFF, Malaysia Forest Fund, is a government initiative, to fund forestry-related projects, and it was established on the 30th of June 2021. Could you elaborate on that and explain what Malaysia Forest Fund actually is and its objective behind the establishment?
Okay. I, Mr. Moderator, Dr. Renard, and all the audience, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us from MFF to be part of the panelists for today's session. It's a great honor for us actually. I got to declare this that besides MFF, I also actually involved in association NGO Orang Asli Association, because I'm in NF also actually by virtue that I'm representing the NGO on the indigenous people. To be specific on orang asli, as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Perak, from Semai tribe. It is one of the indigenous people in our peninsula Malaysia. So I'll be sharing about MFF a little bit, and I will relate also with MTCC. If you ever heard MTCC, because I'm also the board of trustees there, and then also of course I'll focus on our NGO role and function. So with regard to MFF, as our moderator mentioned, that it's formed by Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change. Just recently only, last 2 years. And then the main objective is actually to implement the RFF. So I don't know how many of you have heard RFF, but before that, I better explain what is REDD plus first. I think Dr. Renard, you must be aware of this. Yeah? What is REDD? Actually, REDD is stand for reducing emission from deforestation and forest degradation. So plus there is a plus there. Plus is actually is additional component to the forest related activity to protect the climate change, such as activities like sustainable forest management, conservation, enhance the carbon. So RFF actually is a financial initiative to enable the either the private or the government to contribute and support to the effort of the REDD. That is actually RFF. So our function, actually MFF function, that approved by the cabinet on 2020, is actually to implement this RFF to support the REDD plus program, especially in our country, Malaysia. That is actually our main focus. So on the MTCC, I would like to touch on this because at least people know what is MTCC also. MTCC is actually the other government agency is under Malaysian Prime Industry Commodities. It's formed as a governing body for the Malaysian Timber Certification Scheme. Yeah, I'm one of the board of trustees there, also representing NGO. So my role there is also in NGO. The purpose is actually to provide independent assessment of forest management practice and audit of timber product. This is all actually toward the sustainable forest management. So what is the output of MTCC? MTCC actually at the end that awarded timber concession a forest management certificate and also a chain of custody. So from my NGO, Persatuan, we actually, as everyone know that like others NGO, we are taking care of our community. But for us, actually, it's more like to bridge or to facilitate, mediator between the orang asli and the government and others agency outside. So our role is actually is to protect and to promote our community, and also at the same time to safeguard our interests, especially with regard to our environment. As you all know that we orang asli, orang asal, we are very much related or attached to our environment, especially the forest. That is all about. Get back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. Thank you, Dato. That's a very insightful sharing from you. Now, I would like to shift the floor to Dr. Renard Siew. Now, Dr. Renard Siew, you have mentioned that you yourself have experienced a catastrophic event in your life, but to influence people who have not personally experienced what you experience, I think it's something that is very challenging. As an environmentalist, perhaps you might have some effective ways to influence those, indifferent groups of people to develop a genuine concern and care for our environment. Perhaps you could share.
Yeah, I think it's probably sufficient to say that in sort of the advocacy or engagements that we do, there's quite a wide spectrum of people. Like on one end of the spectrum, right, you have those who are true believers, right, in environmentalism. They're taking action to do something positive about it. And the other end of the extreme, right, you have those who just simply don't know and don't care, right? And this is what makes advocacy and engagement, right, so challenging, because you don't really know where these people sit, right, along that spectrum. One of the things that I found quite useful is really the power of storytelling. So it's really to be able to, tell people your story through selected moments in life, so that they know who you are as a person, where you're coming from, what your values are, what you stand for. And with any story, like, there needs to be a connection, right? So I usually start off with what I call a story of me, then a story of us, where I try to bring people like into the picture for them to realize that this is a shared journey that everyone else faces. And then I'll end the story with a call to action. Not something that's impossible to do, right? Like, oh, let's enact and change policy, relating to environmental issues today, but really small and simple steps so that it doesn't scare or intimidate someone. That's usually sort of a strategy that I adopt in a lot of my engagements with most people. But also, like in this day and age, if you're talking about youth and millennials, they are very good at using social media, right, for advocacy and running campaigns, getting attention on such matters, right? And then we have seen that in Malaysia. There have been climate marches, peaceful rallies that are being done, and people are starting to pay notice to what concerns our youth and millennials of today. So I guess in short, there's no shortage of strategies to use. I'm sure as journalism students, you've probably been exposed to a lot of this. The role of the media as well plays such a crucial role, right, in shaping how people think. Because to a certain extent, there's a statement that people say, you are what you read. So I think journalists play such an important role, right, in ensuring that accurate, reliable, and transparent messages, right, are constantly communicated, right, through the media.
Okay, perhaps you could personally share what are those storytelling techniques that you might have used to influence those people.
Yeah, so for myself, right, apart from like if you've seen some of the TED Talks that I've done, it does take on that structure, right? Like I usually start off by telling, my personal story of what I've encountered, and then I sort of bring the audience in by making them feel that this is a part of a collective journey. And then there's always a call to action, right, in my presentation. So I never leave an audience, right, in a speaking engagement thinking, oh, okay, like he's presented something interesting, great, but so what? Like what are the next steps that he needs to do? I carry out workshops as well, like especially among rural and marginalized youths on climate issues. So I usually take them through what we call a design thinking approach, where I'll highlight a certain problem that we're facing, and then I'll get them to actually brainstorm, right? So sometimes the workshops that we run, right, the whole idea is to facilitate, but not necessarily to tell them or direct someone to say, this is what you must do, right, from steps 1 to 10. But when they come up with certain ideas that are truly their own, you will see that the ownership increases. They tend to take more ownership when a certain idea belongs to them. And this is one of those things that I've realized. We have got to empower people as well to be able to take on certain roles.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Doctor. Now, with the existence of social media platforms, I think the youth can strategize on how to influence these groups of people effectively. And I think from Doctor, he mentioned that yeah, he conducted some workshops, right, to sort of take some ideas from these people on how their insights on the environment. Now, I would like to hand over the floor to Dato again. Dato, it is stated that one of the key themes in the 12th Malaysia Plan is advancing sustainability, which aims to ensure that sustainable economic growth, apart from simultaneously safeguarding the environment. How do environmental NGOs, especially MFF, I mean, even though it's not an NGO, help in supporting and complementing the government's efforts?
Yeah, okay, thank you. First, I think, as everyone knows, the First Malaysia Plan is from year 2021 to 2025. Okay, a 5-year plan. So there's three main actually dimension or three main focus in that First Malaysia Plan. One is, of course, the economic empowerment or resilience, environmental sustainability, being stressed there, and social inclusivity plus the good governance. So as you see that actually all of that actually is already in the what we call SDG, or ESG, all about. So, but what is the challenges that is most important to achieve the sustainable or the environmental sustainability? That is more important that we have to see to actually understand what is the issue. Of course, the real issue on the ground is actually we are still face the issue of unsustainable consumption and production practice, fragmented. I'm talking about the forest aspect, fragmented forests, even though we have like 50 to 55% the forest coverage, loss of diversity, and the other one is quite important actually, the lack of financial support, because doing all sustainability thing in the beginning, you need funds to do that. As everyone know that forest or land is a state matter. So even though federal have some say on the land, but state have the most say in the state matter, because whatever under the forest, the land, all that is under state jurisdiction under our federal constitution. So what is the plan now, actually? Okay. Of course, there's a lot of things to be done under the Malaysia Plan to protect our terrestrial, to protect our inland water, coastal, marine, increase our resilience of our diversity, all that. All of this actually, it needs collaboration between the federal, the state, the NGO, and the public. But the question is that who should initiate? Of course, the federal and also the state. As you know, that land, forest is a state matter. State also actually have some challenge that they need funds to do that. So that's why our MFF come actually. As everyone know, I think Dr. Renard Siew on this. The topic about REDD is discussed during the COP21, the Paris Agreement. So this is one initiative not only by Malaysia but actually by United Nations, UNFCCC, to do something to control or to mitigate or to make sure that our PHG or our climate change doesn't go increase more than 2%, right, Doctor? Celsius, that's the whole idea actually. So we need to do something. We need to do something. So as I mentioned earlier, government through NFF have introduced this REDD class program for Malaysia. We call it RFF, as I mentioned earlier. So what is RFF actually? What is REDD? There's three components here. This is what NFF all about. We are the one actually later on who run the RFF. Under this RFF, there's two components. Yeah? There's two components. One actually component is the forest conservation certificate. The other component is actually forest carbon offset. What is forest carbon? What is forest conservation certificate or FCC? It is a non-market instrument that voluntarily contribute by private or government sector to support conservation activity. That is one. Okay. The other one is actually the forest carbon offset. Or we call it short form FCO, a market instrument that focus on high quality PHG emission. Actually, it can be traded even in Malaysia. In Malaysia now, in Bursa also already trading this, even though not a big scale. So these two initiatives actually going to be run by MFF with the collaboration of the state government and of course the federal government and with the support from NGO and the general public. It's very important that we have to work hand in hand with all the stakeholders. So as NGO, what we do? Okay, that's most important. As NGO, as our asal NGO, what we do? So we will collaborate with MFF and NTCC, because NTCC, one component of REDD, actually the sustainable forest management, and the guardian of the sustainable forest management is NTCC actually. So we as NGO, especially the orang asal NGO, we will work closely with MFF and NTCC. That's the reason maybe why it is in the board as a board trustee to work from inside and also from outside to make sure that whatever that we plan by the government or by the agency is actually will be successful later on. That is very important. So I think, as Dr. Renard rightly mentioned, that environment is not one person job. It's actually everyone's job. The whole people, the whole Malaysia, and the whole nation. So I think we have to work hand to hand each other. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Dato. I think what you have highlighted earlier, it's really important for everyone from the federal to NGOs to coordinate, to support conservation activities. I think that's a really insightful point. Now, I would like to move to Dr. Renard. Doctor, this might be a contentious question. I think Malaysia, is not really prepared for, the crisis that we face today related to, environment. For instance, I've cited from this one article on Berita Harian, which was reported on the 4th of June, which was, I think, 2 weeks ago, where there was a terrifying incident where this woman was fortunately safe after her car became submerged in a flash flood. I think it happened in Klang. So this has risked people's lives. What happened to our country put people in risk. So how prepared do you think Malaysia currently is in terms of preparing for another impacts of climate change or any other disasters?
Yeah, I think firstly, we need to acknowledge the fact that, a lot of these catastrophic events, right, like storms, floods, they're happening at a higher level of frequency with more intensity, and it's only going to get worse, right? Unless if we are able to cap temperatures from increasing by 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is basically the magic number that every COP event, right, conference of parties, have been emphasizing on. But unfortunately, if you look at, like where in terms of trajectory where we are heading, we seem to be surpassing that 1.5 number. We're heading towards, a 2.2, 2.7, in fact, and by 2035, which is really scary because this is what scientists have been warning us. They say that if we are unable to achieve, to cap temperatures from increasing, then these are the types of extreme weather events that we'll be seeing happening more frequently. And if you look at data, right, from NASA, in terms of the frequency of such events, right, they used to only cover about 1% of our entire Earth's surface. This was way back, right, in the 19, like the early 2000s, right? But in this day and age, right, that number has already increased by about 14%. So in terms of surface area, like as a whole world, like 14%, right, of areas, right, are actually exposed to such events. So to be very honest, such catastrophes that you're citing in the media, it's only going to increase. Like a couple of years back, we were hearing about severe floods happening back to back, right, from China, Germany, and also in Malaysia, like we actually had quite a bad flood in December 2021, which actually resulted in fatalities. And these are people who are living, mind you, in urban areas. So to your question around how we should actually be prepared for it, I think we have to look at what the data says. A lot of our interventions, right, needs to be scientific. At the moment, I would say as a country, we do focus a fair bit on the mitigation side of things, how we are cutting down on emissions, but not so much perhaps on adaptation. Adaptation, I think, is an aspect that we really must focus on because it's really about, people's livelihoods, longevity and sustainability, economic activities, right, such as things like agriculture, they're being disrupted, and in the IPCC report, they're talking about a double whammy effect. So you're not just talking about floods, right? But immediately after that, you suffer from prolonged droughts that are happening back to back. And you couple that with an exponential increase, right, in population growth, food security is going to be an issue. So these are the types of adaptation factors that, we have to start thinking about very seriously. And it's a complex issue because it cuts across multiple industries, It's not just those in the agriculture and the building and construction sector, because infrastructure basically needs to be more resilient, but there's also a policy angle to it. So, like if you talk about readiness, I think it's really about being able to align, all of these different stakeholders, right? And, like with Dato himself, I think we have already highlighted the fact that, this is not just an individual effort. You need like a whole of government, all of society approach in tackling, right, the climate crisis. And that's where we really need to be, in order to move the needle.
Yeah, I think I agree with your point. I think what you have mentioned are quite concerning to the point where I feel sort of worried, because I think if we don't take serious measures, there are more, aggravating issues that will come in the near future. Yeah, I agree with what you have said. For those audience that is watching, let these key points inspire us to take action and make a positive impact on our environment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to our next speaker, kindly be reminded to utilize the chat box provided for any questions you may have. We encourage you to take this opportunity to engage with our speakers and share your inquiries should you have any questions in mind. Please type your questions in the chat box, and we are going to read them for you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Now we are moving into the second round of our e-Colloquium talk session. Now, before we begin, both of our speakers have highlighted some of crucial points for you to absorb, for you to comprehend. Now, for the first question of this second round of talk session, I would like to hand over this floor to Dato Suki. Dato, you have mentioned a lot regarding MTCS, REDD+, FCC, FCO. These are some of the strategies planned by Malaysia Forest Fund. But also one of the most common strategies, strategized by NGOs is usually by organizing relevant programs related to the environmental. But to measure success within these conducted programs is not an easy task. It is really it is indeed really challenging. So, are there any measures to assess the impact and the effectiveness of these programs and initiative taken by NGOs generally in Malaysia?
Okay. Measuring things is not an easy thing. Okay? A lot of criteria, a lot of indicators is used. Of course, normally people use the efficiency, the outcome, the accountability, maybe also the relevancy, appropriateness to the certain topic or community. But for our NGO, orang asal NGO, let me explain it. Orang asal, the indigenous people NGO, we normally use standard or what do you call it, indicators provided or agreed by all of us indigenous people in accordance to this UN RIC. I don't know how many of you have heard the UN RIC. UN RIC stands for United Nations Declaration for the indigenous people, the right of indigenous people. So UN RIC actually is something like the declaration for to us it's common law that passed by UN General Assembly on 13th of September 2007. So 2007. It's actually some sort of a common law or international law that protecting the right of indigenous people, especially on the culture, the land, and the way of life. So it is actually to ensure it's probably about 370 million of indigenous people all over the world, are free from exploitation and discrimination. That is actually the main purpose of that declaration. So that UN RIC has 46 articles actually and 9 chapters. So I will pass one of the articles inside the UN RIC. Of course, the key principle is actually right to self-determination, right to be recognized as distinct people, because not many people. So I remember when I first went to KL early 80s, I go to this one bus station at the Klang bus station. So one guy asked me, "Are you Sabahan?" I said, "No, I'm orang asli." They said, "Adakah orang asli?" So nobody knows there is orang asli exists in this peninsula Malaysia. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why maybe this declaration is very important. And the most important thing, actually, the right to free, prior, and informed consent. That's what I'm going to talk about. FPIC. So when you ask me how to measure, the effectiveness to us from the indigenous people NGO. To us, this is very important because it's already agreed all over the world in Article 32. So what is FPIC about? F means free. Free, they mean the consent is free, given voluntarily, and without coercion, intimidation, or manipulation. Because you must understand some of the project go to us, sometimes it's actually the Indian people are forced to agree, not free to agree. So that's why one of the way to measure that whatever activity, especially to the jungle, to the environment, to the local community, must be free. The second word is actually prior. What is prior? Prior, actually, the consent is held sufficiently in advance. In advance of any authorization or commencement of the activity. It should be, actually, you consult first before you do the project. If not that, you do the project, you implement the project, you agree to the project, then only you consult. So its prior is very important. I think this will not only apply to the orang asal or indigenous people, to all, to everybody, to communities, but this is, I'm using this as one of the measurements that agreed by UN, especially with regard to the indigenous people. Then inform. The other thing, this is accountability thing. Inform means it's a bit sincerity. The engagement and type of information that should be provided prior to seeking consent. That means you must inform, clearly inform, transparent to the people. Some of the project or some of the activity, they say they want to do B, but actually they are doing A. They are not being informed properly, and they're not transparent. Of course, the last one is actually the consent is the collective decision made by the right holder, the stakeholder, the community. You don't only refer to one or two person. You must refer the majority of the community. Of course, very difficult to get 100%, but it should be collective, agreed by the community. Not only you refer to the certain person inside that community. So I think all of this actually is in the ESG, is in the UN REIT, it's everywhere, but it's also for us, we use this as measurement. So that's why in NTCC and even in MFF later on, in NTCC, for you to get the suitable forest certificate, you have to comply with the Malaysian Timber Certificate Scheme. Under that Malaysian Timber Certificate Scheme, there is criteria and indicators that you have to fulfill. So one of the principles inside there actually is the right of the indigenous people. And the main component inside there is the FPIC. It's clearly specified. You must comply with this article, with this criteria, in order for you to get your certification. So do this in MFF later on, because in MFF, for you to get MCC and FCO later on, you have to apply the principle of sustainable forest management and also the REDD. What is REDD criteria? So one of the criteria, you have to comply with the requirement of FPIC. So you ask me, to us, it's very simple. Of course, there is so many criteria to measure all that, but to us, especially the indigenous people community NGO, we always refer to FPIC as the main criteria or measurement that to see the success of whatever activity on this sustainable environment sustainability. So I think, of course, there is many other indicators for other people, but to us, this is actually agreed all over the world by the indigenous people and endorsed by United Nations.
Thank you, Dato. So Dato just now just shared, based on the perspective of Orang Asli, in measuring the success of programs and initiatives undertaken by NGOs. He mentioned one of the most interesting part. He mentioned FPIC, about FPIC, free, prior, informed, and consent. I think it is important to comply with these terms based on the perspective of orang asli to ensure that the programs and initiatives are successful. Now, I would like to hand over the floor again to Dr. Renard Siew. Dr. Renard, we all know that many countries, including Malaysia, we are, prioritizing, economic advancement. Therefore, the government needs to, somehow utilize, most of our lands, to develop the country for, building projects and something related, something like that. As an environmental advocate, what are some of these strategies do you think Malaysia can apply or strategize in establishing an ideal balance, to create that ideal balance between economic advancement and also environmental preservation?
I think the key is really about finding a win-win situation, which doesn't happen very often. As you have rightly pointed out, sometimes, there are certain stakeholders or parties that are just generally more concerned about more on the economic side rather than environmental preservation. But we need to make sure that they're both intact. So one example that I would give is, the potential of ecotourism. Malaysia is one of the 12 most mega diverse countries, right, in the world. We are blessed, right, with tremendous flora and fauna. It's our real, treasure, like khazana, that we need to play a role in protecting. But environmental preservation or conservation, right, doesn't just come, shouldn't just be seen as a cost, right, but rather as a form of investment. And tourists are very interested in this day and age, right? In trying to understand and study a little bit more about, how we could play a part, right, in actually promoting our country, right, as a, country that dabbles into this area. So I think there is a lot of potential, especially in Borneo, the heart of Borneo, where they're so rich, right, in flora and fauna. But how do we then use that, right, and generate a source of income? So there's a lot of marketing campaigns that need to be done, word of mouth. We need a whole, strategy, right, around how we actually sell this idea. Because when this works, eventually what you will see is a domino impact. If it works in Borneo, people would then think, hey, I can actually very easily replicate and scale up such ideas, right? And it opens up this new opportunity, especially among the young and millennials, right, to think, hey, perhaps there is an opportunity to dabble into ecotourism. And one example that I'll give is that I've had younger millennials, right, come to me and say, how can I use AI, right, to help set up, perhaps a ecotourism center, so that people can also visualize and see, right, some of the livelihoods, the habitats that we have, right, in our own backyard. And I thought that those are innovation that we require in this day and age. Museums are changing, right, are also very rapidly changing. Information centers are really stepping up their game as well. So I think these are a few ideas I think that we could explore, further in terms of trying to reach that win-win situation.
So it is equally important, economic advancement and also environmental preservation. Do you agree on that? Like what you mentioned?
Yeah, I think the best formula is if it was a perfect, right, integration between both. But even if it's not, like specifically for land development, then I would say that minimizing environmental harm is very important as well. Hence, in any project developments, right, like especially those that are developing in highly sensitive areas, I think there needs to be very thorough environmental impact assessments that are being done, and to also ensure that those who are involved, right, actually take the necessary steps to mitigate. There's a whole hierarchy, right, to reduce, mitigate, pollution, and to make sure that we continue to safeguard, important environmental areas.
Right. I think that requires a mutual understanding between stakeholders in ensuring that it is a success to implement one. Now let's go back to Dato. Dato, you have mentioned that stakeholders need to coordinate between one another. But to what extent have NGOs in Malaysia or Malaysia Forest Fund been effective in influencing government policies and get involved in their decision making process, and are their voices really heard by the government?
Okay, to answer this, I would say in general, yes. If you compare with in early 60s, 70s, 80s, where the voice of NGO, so-called democracy, is not really as good as at present. You see, with the help of the media, with the help of people around the world, all that, the role of NGO now is actually very, very important and can be considered as and recognized as the influential players in decision making, especially in the environment. Environment, because it involves people. If you heard that in international, everyone know about Greenpeace. Everyone know WWF, EEA, IPCC, whatever is it. In Malaysia, we know, we heard about Sahabat Alam Malaysia, MNS, National Society, WWF, Watch Penang, so many things. In fact, that's the reason why I think now some of us NGO representing NGO in the government agencies. That's what I'm doing now. Actually, even though I'm with MFF and MTCC, actually at the same time, I carry my head, this one, as a orang asal NGO. So it is very important actually. So if you say to what extent, I think the NGO is considered successfully already influenced government in the decision making. Like today, when I representing MFF, so whatever decision in MFF or MTCC, I actually responsible because I'm inside. I'm taking care of the interests of the people that behind me. You see, if I'm not doing good, then means I'm not accountable to my people. So that is good as that. So how to actually make the process or decision making in this decision making by the NGO is more like important, all that. So I think one of it actually to further involve all the stakeholders or the NGO in all the government activities, either in the dialogue, in the seminar, in the conference, by the ministry. So like recently, the MODA and POP was invited in one of the dialogue with Minister of Natural Resources to discuss on this environmental issue and also on this wildlife. Have you heard recently that orang asli been by the tiger and also been disturbed by the elephant? So we need to discuss about it. Why that happened? Why this tiger and elephant go and cross to our settlement? Just because of their wildlife area being disturbed, as good as that. And they don't have the corridor for this wildlife because our jungle now is become fragmented, not connected, not like last time. You see, from Perak connect to Kelantan, connect to Pahang, connect to Terengganu, because of our activities, all that. You see, as you see in Kelantan picture that we show now, some of the forest being used for forest plantation. So there is no more forest corridor for all these animals, the wildlife to roaming to one area to other area. So that's why our job to say that, look, to protect all that, actually to protect our people, I said to protect the environment, to protect the animal, all that, you need to do something. So we are invited in all this time. In decision making, as I mentioned earlier, we inside already. We inside the MTCC, we are inside the MFF. In the MTCC, because MTCC are formulating standard and guideline for forest certification. So we make sure that all requirements or criteria or indicators will relate to protection of the environment and our indigenous people and local community is being one of the components that need to be as a compulsory, need to be complied. So that's why we are actually part of the government to formulate this guideline, all that. So I think the other thing is that NGO also, of course, we are not expert, maybe Dr. Renard NGO been also, like I know that my friend NGO, MNS, and WWF have been appointed by the government agency to conduct a study on this biodiversity, on this wild animal, all that. So I think government start looking at the NGO as their partners, not as the other side, the opposition. Their partners to work together hand in hand to make our environment better. So I think NGO play very integral part in our civil society. So, but of course, we also have the challenges, all that it is, with regard to this. So whatever it is, I believe that we NGO are playing very, very important role in this protecting our environment. I mentioned earlier, from the indigenous people NGO, we actually work work together, collaborate together with the government or with other people. Even now, listed companies start approaching us to work on these tree plantings, to work on this green project, all that. In order, I believe this because the ESG, the doctor, because they have to do that actually. They have to show their initiative for the, environmental. So I think this is a good move. So we are open. We will work together. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, it should be on the basis of sincerity. FPIC must be applied all the time. That is my keyword for whatever program carried out either by the government, by the other NGO, or by the listed company or whatever. We are actually open for that collaboration all the time.
Thank you, Dato. Perhaps you could share, are there any current policies that you want to suggest, or perhaps that some of the policies that have been shared have been suggested to the government apart from what you have shared earlier? Perhaps you could elaborate on that.
Can you repeat again? Sorry, I don't get you. What program?
Like, what are some of the policies that you want to suggest to the government, or perhaps some of policies that have been suggested to the government by Malaysia Forest Fund, or perhaps you yourself?
I'll give you examples in this. I hold this book. Okay, this is actually from MTCC. It's regarding Malaysian criteria and indicators for sustainable forest management. So as mentioned earlier, this is very important document for actually, especially for forestry. Yeah? In order for you to get your forest certification, you have to comply with these criteria and indicators or standard. So as I mentioned earlier, during early days, before this whatever document been adopted, we actually was the one stakeholder being involved in formulation of these indicators. So I would say that we are very successful in influence the government to actually take into consideration of Indian people right in this during this formulation of these criteria indicators. As I mentioned, that under Principle 3 is basically mentioned about the indigenous people right. So you have, in order for you to get a sustainable forest certificate, you must comply with this principle. Of course, inside that principle, there is a tweet number that you have to comply. So when loggers want to apply for sustainable forest certificate, they have to comply with the few indicators of criteria already specified under this Malaysian Forest Timber Certification Scheme. So I would say this is a success story from our NGO input that is already incorporated inside the national standard. It's very important. But of course, this is not the end of it. We will review every 5 years according to the current need, because of course, the things change, all that. We always update every 5 years this document. We review and update. So of course, we as NGO also invite inside there to be part of the review. So I think we are playing very important role there. We thank you for the government also inviting us, taking care of our right. But the issue is that, okay, Dr. Renard, not about the indicators, about the guideline, all that. Whether people follow this one or not, that is actually the challenge now. So that's how we have to work together on the ground. Because even though even though you have a very good law, a very good guideline, very good indicators, if on the ground people don't have the good governance, no accountability, no responsibility, no commitment of doing that, you cannot get. So that's why the audit is very important. The on-the-ground audit is very important to make sure that this guideline be applied properly, and then the certificate that they get is actually is a real good certificate to the people, to the country, and to the nation.
I think with that, completion of book, it indicates that Malaysia Forest Fund is really influential in decision making process. Okay, that's about formulation of criteria indicators. Now, Doctor, Dato has mentioned how Malaysia Forest Fund influence, or has been involved in decision-making process with the government. And I think formulation of criteria indicators is one of the things that is important for our forestry. Now, what policies or initiative do you think the government should prioritize to address environmental issues effectively? For instance, we already have this one policy. It's called Extended Producer Responsibility (EPR) policy, where it has been implemented in the country for years to ensure that many manufacturers are responsible for their waste management. Do you think this policy alone, or the current existing policies in this country, are enough, or do you think that there are some other policies that you want to see to be implemented in this country to ensure that our environment is well protected?
Yeah, maybe just to echo what Dato had said, right? You can have some of the world best policies, like spelling out all of your guidelines, but at the end of the day, it really boils down to the implementation. You have to make sure that people actually follow, what's been mentioned, stated. So to do that, you actually need to have a strong governance, right, or regulation around how do you actually make sure that what's stated in your policy gets enforced, right, on the ground. I think there is a disconnect there, and that seems to be one of the issues or challenges that we currently face, right? But I think it's important to clarify that upfront, right? And this applies across any policies, on the environment that we need to. Now, for me myself, I think my wish list has always been the Climate Change Act. I think this was something that was brought up in 2018, and multiple stakeholders have already been engaged. You've got the private, public sector, government agencies all sitting together to brainstorm. Like what needs to be included, what needs to be enforced, and what sort of resourcing that is required. But we have waited for quite some time now, and still at this stage, right? Going back to one of our earlier discussions, Farhan, around where is the sense of urgency? Is Malaysia ready to tackle issues around resilience? I think we really need to lock in this act, right, so that whoever that's managing or governing, right, will continue to ensure that key activities that have been prioritized continue to be implemented over time. I think that first and foremost is very important. There will be certain gaps in certain policies. Another example that I would take is, our Waste Segregation Act 2007. So, when it first came out, what it's in the act in itself is that you must be able to segregate waste, right? But then when it actually came to the implementation, like a lot of communities around the ground were pointing fingers, saying that, oh, shouldn't the government or the ruling party be the one that sets out the infrastructure for waste segregation? And then likewise, you flip it around. The policymakers would also point fingers down and say, hey, their role is just to set the policy. When it comes to implementation, you all have to do it. So it's gaps like that where we really have to sit down collectively, right, as a whole stakeholder group, to have a common understanding in terms of managing expectations, what's required and not. Like I say, another key gap is also with resourcing, because when it comes to implementation, right, financial resources is also one of the key things that needs to be talked about transparently. And I don't think this is only something that comes, necessarily just from public funds, but also private sector, right? So we need new innovative public-private sector financing. I'm very sure, Dato, you would agree as well that even in the forestry landscape, right, we need that sort of mutual cooperation in order to advance things forward. So a lot of gaps, a lot of challenges, but sometimes it's really taking just that first step. Once people see that there is a model to follow that is effective, hopefully that could be a case study for other areas, other environmental areas to also follow suit.
So let me reiterate what Dato and Dr. Renard has agreed with. It is really important, to for all stakeholders and policymakers to coordinate and integrate, or else whatever mitigation measures that we plan could not be a successful one. Do you agree on that? So yeah, I think it's really important for all parties to integrate. Now, Dato, acknowledging the vital role of NGOs and their contributions in preserving the environment in this country, how can these efforts be further strengthened and supported by the public?
Okay, that is the best part for us, NGO, because you know that in order to make us function well. So we ourselves also need to be up to date, to the current issue, to get to the current policy. So we must have resources. That's very important. There is two types of resources. One is on the information or knowledge. Yeah, it is very important when you want to talk about the subject story, subject matter. We ourselves must be equipped with information and the knowledge on that particular subject. So like Dr. Renard may be expert in climate change. So we need expert. I mean, to get his. Of course, we are not necessarily part of our member or our ahli or whatever it is, but we hope that we can collaborate with these type of people to get information or data or whatever impact to the community. So information, knowledge is very important. That's always the challenge with us because we don't have the expert on everything. So whatever is it, we try to gather whatever information that we get amongst our community. The second part is very important. The challenges for us actually the resources on the financial fund that what we mentioned earlier is everywhere actually, not with our orang asal, orang asli NGO. I think most of NGO facing this problem unless that particular NGO is by funded or they have a special project or whatever, because NGO meaning that is voluntary job for everyone. When you sit there, actually, it's not that you are making money. You're actually giving your money, you're giving your efforts to the community, to the people, to the nation through a organized association. So for us, the Orang Asli NGO, we always have this problem, of course, because NGO meaning that most of it actually contribution from your members. So everyone know that Orang Asli actually our poverty level is very high. So how to get fund from our people? But we actually always work with the outside, with the agency, whatever. So I think, most important to make the NGO, especially a small NGO like us, actually there must be a support from the various people. First, of course, we need to get the support from our people, the beneficiaries party, the community. So how to get the support? Of course, to make them aware that the importance of us in protecting their right. This is very important because sometimes environment you cannot see the impact of 1 day or 2 days. So we have a story that the people, the community only come to us when a logging company encroach and cut their tree. Before that, they don't look at us, you see. So we have a problem only, but we are not saying no. We are saying that this is new from them. We have to work together, collaborate together to avoid this thing happen. So of course, we will continue with our activity to create awareness among our beneficiary party, our own community. The second thing, actually, we need the support also from the government or GLC, as mentioned earlier. So slowly we are getting the support from the government. Sometimes they are giving us little bit grant to run our association, to do some more project, all that. With this fund, we can finance our administration thing, the office, all that. We need resources like this to this one. Then we work also with GLC now. It's thanks to the new initiative under the Climate Action Plan by the World Agenda 2030 also on the ESG. When we come ESG, one of the things, the social and the environment, the social and the government, that GLC are looking at us actually. 1 or 2 GLC start working with us, especially those who in the plantation, those who are in whatever natural resources, the oil and gas, all that will come to us because they need to show, they need to prove, they need to do something on the environment. So we are the first one to be approached actually. So continuous support from this government and the GLC is very important, especially on the CSR or whatever. So then I think the other to make a function also we must be be recognized, because we don't want to be seen as the enemy to the government policies. We don't want to see anti development. We don't want to be seen as anti outside people. But we want to be seen as a partner to this development. But it must be a sustainable development, sustainable project. So just like rightly mentioned by Dr. Renard, there is a lot of, whenever you want to do project now, there must be IA lah, SIA lah, HIA lah. It's very thick book at the end. We don't know how to read. But the most important is that, as I told earlier, it must be with the good intention, a good governance. It must be transparent, accountable. All that when you do the thing must be with a good heart. It's very important, because without that, if your intention, day one intention is wrong, that means it's not going to be get a good result. So with all this, actually, we want that we hope that we can work together through the concept of FPIC just now. So at the end, we want that win-win situation. Of course, the company want the project, but for us, we want our livelihood and environment not being disturbed. That's all about sustainable right. Whatever we need today, we should not jeopardize the need for the future to get their own needs. So we want to protect our people, our current, because if for us, I think as everyone know, to us, to you, to some people, the forest, the jungle is maybe you want good oxygen. To orang asli, orang asal, jungle is our supermarket. So we need the water, fresh water, because we drink direct water from the river. So we need all the jungle product for our daily food. We need all the jungle produce, all that for our house, for our whatever is it. So jungle is just like our supermarket. It's just like we go to DIY, we want to buy what? Okay, today I want to do my tangga, my staircase. So I go to jungle. I don't go to DIY with our people, because you must understand that more than 50% of our communities still live in the jungle, in the forest. That is the fact. Because it's only 1% of us inside the local authority area, 50% in the peripheral, 40% still in the interior, meaning 20 kilometers away from the main road. So to us, forest is very important. And so that's why sometimes people don't understand apa this orang asli, everything tak boleh, this one tak boleh. So that's why, to the extent we said no forestry at all. So that's why at the beginning, nobody want to join this MTCC, MFF from our NGO, because we are really against to this. Because what? From those days, 60, 70, they're not harvesting this forest sustainably. They just simply cut here and there, then become our water, become polluted, all that. So that is the reason why. But now things is improved. So, but it's not that I said no more improvement. Room for improvement. A lot of room for improvement. A lot of collaboration at the work. But at the end, is awareness for all people is very important. Not only from the public, not only from the company. Our politicians also must play important role. Sometimes, when you are in power, try to do something good for the people. So political play important role to our environment, taking the environment, because they are the policy formulator. They are the one who formulate policy. They are the one who give resources to implement that particular policy. To do something policy good for the environment, for the people. So the other thing I want to touch is on, we should start create the human value. It's very important because what environment is about the people, and we must create the value to all of us from the early days. When you love the environment from your small childhood, I believe that you will carry until the end of your life.
That's true, Dato. Perhaps Dr. Renard, you might want to add to what have been highlighted by Dato. Do you have any additional insights?
No, I agree with everything that Dato has said, and I really like the point that he made about how education really needs to start from our younger generation for them to have an appreciation of nature and why it's so important. I also feel like the Orang Asal community, right? Like I think they deserve to be given a voice and obviously a seat at the table when it comes to decision making, because not a lot of us, right, living in urban areas, for example, right, know how important, right, the forest is to them. Like as Dato say, it's like a supermarket for them. Like and it's diminishing, as even as we speak. So knowing such stories, I think it should spur us to actually take action, right, to also work with them to see how we might be able to continue to preserve this like treasures, the kazana that I spoke about a little bit also. And I think this is also where I think the role of the media has such a critical role to play, right, in highlighting such narratives that are often that are not very often heard of. And you'll have like your work cut out for you.
Definitely. I'm sorry. Thank you to both of our speakers for highlighting some of these crucial points for us to, preserve the environment. I think I will reiterate this once again. Cooperation from all those involved stakeholders as well as the public is really important in ensuring whatever mitigation measures or whatever plans that are planned will be well executed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind all participants that this is not the end yet. I hope everyone could stay back for a while for our Q&A session and photography session right after this colloquium. Please fill up the feedback form that has been provided in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I will read some of the questions from the audience. Dato, are you still there?
I'm still here. Don't worry.
All right.
Until the end.
Okay, now let's begin with our Q&A session. I will read questions from our audience today. What are those questions? Let me read chat box. Okay. For the first question from our audience, this is pointed to Dato Suki. Dato, what steps should be taken by NGOs and organizations to promote sustainable practices and lifestyles in this country?
Okay, we will be speaking on the orang asal perspective. This what we've been doing or what we're going to do. So, as I told you earlier, is actually awareness is very important, in this environmental things, because environmental involve a very big spectrum of community or area or that. So one person cannot do everything. So for us, orang asli, especially in Perak, way back in early 2000, we start to activate back our program that we call it GSPI, or some kampong, they call it Ganggulang. What does mean actually? GSPI or the Ganggulang, what is in the thing? It is actually the harvesting festival. It's the same like what the Iban, the Kadazan are doing now. The Iban is Gawai, right? Dari Gawai. The Kadazan, the Keamatan. So for us in Perak or in Semenanjung, especially we celebrate this GSPI, Ganggulang, or some call Hari Moyang or whatever. So what is important about this? Because it's actually a celebration of our culture and custom. It is actually to remind or to educate our new generation to love the nature. Because it's about harvesting festival. It's about that you appreciate the food that given by the God, that to you is actually all about the Paddy story. Okay, so why we have a celebration every year? Because to thank the God that to give us the food, to give our whatever that we plant, good, all that. But actually, the most important is if you study the story about this harvesting festival, I'm talking about the orang asli. It's actually how they do this cultivation. It's very sustainable way of doing things. Because one family, the most they can cultivate, the most clear area is probably about 1 acre, above the most 2 acres. Then how they clear the jungle or the area? They cut it, they leave it the stump. So meaning, why it's very important the stump. So there is no soil erosion. You see? Then you only cut certain area that you want to plant the paddy. Okay? Then after you cut the thing, you burn. Why you burn the thing? Because you need that as the natural fertilizer. Then you start growing this paddy using that, I don't know what we call it tugal. I don't know what you call it in English. So then to wait that particular paddy to grow up, we plant in between actually is the pumpkin, the long bean, whatever is it, that actually acts as the ground cover. So before your paddy, right? So you have in between the ground cover that again protect the soil erosion. You see, it's very important. So at the same time giving you intermediate food for your family. So at the end of the season, you don't harvest all. When the thing get rich, you leave it certain stock as a seed for your next circle. This is very important, the next circle. Then you keep all whatever your food, whatever your harvest for 1 whole year. So then you will leave the area that you already cut for another 6 months. For what? Actually, to rehabilitate the soil so it can naturally become fertile again. That is called biodiversity. So to remember all this, that's why we celebrate. It's very important for that celebration to remind back to our all, especially new generation, about the importance of our food security, the importance about taking care of our environment, the importance about doing the right thing to our nature. Because this is all about. So I think I'm very proud that every year now we celebrate the thing. During that celebration, we try to highlight all the things back, you see, to demonstrate our food, to demonstrate back our even our culture, all that, everything inside there. So the other, that is on the peninsula. On the other side of cross in Borneo side, I will share with my friend indigenous from the Borneo, especially on from the people of Kadazan or Dusun. I think some of you might heard about this tagal. Of course, I think the Borneo people know. I don't know whether you have heard of tagal. You heard of tagal before? No? No, huh? This tagal actually is a project. What tagal means in the Dusun word is actually provision. So tagal aim is actually to protect or to increase the number of fish in certain sector of the river. Because because this is the way of to actually increase the number, the population number of the fish, and also to protect certain species of fish. So how they do it actually? So they identify certain portion of the river. So in that particular kampong, then they actually prohibit outside people from going into that particular area prior any consent from the head of people. Even their own people also actually they discourage of going there. It's to protect what? They protect the people, go and poison the fish, then protect from people using whatever instrument to actually harvest that particular fish in the big volume, whatever you don't need. You only need what you need because some people commercialize the thing. So they'll keep the thing for maybe 6 months or 1 year. Then only they harvest it. But by doing that, they actually cultivate back the population. This is all about biodiversity, natural. This is what we call nature-based solution to that particular animal, whatever, you try to protect that. This been done successfully. And then if you go there without the consent, all that, you will be penalty by the community, not only by one person, by community. So when they talk about community, work together, of course, people cannot, if one person only go and jaga or control the thing, people might not, don't care. But the whole community taking care of the thing, so people might look at it, dare not to go in. I think this is too simple and success story that we are doing. Then we're going to promote it to the people, to our community, to make awareness, actually, especially to the young generation, that it's important to take care our own environment. So we start with our own people, we start with our own community, we start from our own area. That is very important. If one person taking care their own business, everyone taking care, I think we don't have a problem, right?
Definitely. I think we need to educate, everyone, especially those who are, still children. Now we have a question from Suhana for from Alia Isha for Dr. Renard Siew. The question is, what do you think will be the biggest hurdles or difficulties that we encounter in our efforts to combat climate change?
Yeah, I think that's quite a loaded question. I mean, where do we start, right? I think first and foremost, the thing about climate change is that people always think about it as a concept that's 30,000 feet above ground. And if you are not familiar, right, in this space, there's a lot of technical jargon people use a lot of abbreviations like, IPCC, WMO, 1.5, like UNABAVI, GFANS, so on and so forth. And every year there's some new initiative that's being launched. If you don't follow the space, you might get lost in translation. So for a lay person who's trying to understand or comprehend this issue for the first time, right, it can be a very scary journey for them, because it's like literally going through an entire dictionary just to be able to understand like what are some of the concepts behind it, what are the justifications or reasons of how this has actually emerged. So I think there is challenge in communication, because it's not catered right to the necessarily the right audience. And there's something to be said about how we need to restructure, right, specific comms, bearing in mind who the target audience is. When you speak to financiers, right, then there's a certain way of structuring, your communication on climate change so that it makes sense for them, right? If you talk to, say, a lay person on the street, then you need to be able to simplify it even more so that they can immediately see, okay, this is the impact of climate change. It causes floods. It affects my livelihood. What can I do about it, right? And then if you talk to professionals, I think we also brought this up earlier, depending on where they are in the construction industry, in agriculture, there is just very specific way of actually communicating to them so that they understand what the issues are and can actually act accordingly. So challenging communication is definitely one thing. The second thing that I think was also brought up in our earlier discussion was with gaps in policies, right? So one area that I've highlighted earlier was around, the Climate Change Act. I feel that it's so important that we get this right, that we don't just cover climate mitigation, how we are cutting down on emissions, but the adaptation side of things, right? How can we build resilience? And adaptation is such a big word because it cuts across so many multiple areas. You're talking about making sure that in your construction process, like you either avoid flood prone areas or you build right certain barriers to prevent floods from actually affecting right this new houses or people's settlement. And then all the way down to how do you make agriculture more resilient, right, to address the double whammy effect, as we say, floods followed by droughts immediately, and then you see a decline in crop use. And they need to be contextual, because we have so many different communities among us. A lot of people tend to in terms of their framing or mindset, when they are designing a policy, who do they design for? They design for urban people. But what about, marginalized communities? I'm talking about those who are, disabled, aging, those who live in rural areas who may not necessarily be visible, right, to policymakers. I think their considerations, their needs and requirements need to be accounted for. You have to, ensure that they are included in the designing of the policies, in the operationalization of these policies. And then, of course, we have also covered, just because you have nice policies doesn't mean that what gets translated, right, on the ground is an exact match. And you have a lot of gaps, right? It could be interpretation, it could be misaligned expectations, it could be resourcing challenges, which we have highlighted before. So, it's really a whole ecosystem, that we are trying to mobilize in order to address the challenges of climate change. A lot to think about here, and I've just been able to highlight, or summarize maybe just a couple of big ones, I feel. But if you really start digging in, then you will be able to see, right, the layers and layers of complexity.
So most of Doctor's key points just now are related to communication problems. But I agree when you mentioned about jargons. I think I quite I'm quite struggling to understand all those jargons related to environment, because, like you said, there are always new jargons made. Now let's shift the floor to Dato. From Siti Khairunisa. Hello, good morning. I have a question. What are some successful projects or initiatives carried out by NGOs and organizations in Malaysia to address environmental issues?
Yeah, thanks. Of course, I think there is a lot of success story in Malaysia. Some people heard about this, about recycle program by Econ9, and about food, like zero waste Malaysia, and other things. But I want to share from my own perspective, from my own NGO, orang asli NGO. So we just started. Of course, I mentioned earlier is the despite all that we are going to start, and we just started a program. Love our own forest with the work with initiative of others, a small company actually that I know. So what we are going to do, that's very important actually. Our intention is that to focus on forest degradation area. This is actually one of the under the REDD plus program, the degradation area. You see, some of you, if you're familiar with forest jungle, or that not all jungles are actually fully planted or full the density of the trees. Some actually been disturbed already. Some become bare, all that. So it is also in our kampong area, all that also is happened. Some area is actually already degraded, without good species, without good tree, all that. We try to work with our own community, with initiative from our persatuan and company. Actually, we work with a company, small company, my friend's company. What we going to do? We are going to do tree plantation, but not all. We choose the special one. First, that we choose the one that tree is the instinct plant tree that is not easy to find. So we try to get that particular species, then we plant it nearby our area. The second thing is that we will plant with the jungle fruit tree. So many people don't know that the jungle fruit tree are available in our forest. Even our young orang asli also doesn't know. You ever heard of perah? You ever heard of tampoy? You ever heard mengkapas? Some of my children also never see all this. So this is going to be our initiative. We're going to replant back, get all these wild, all these jungle fruit species, all that. We're going to plant it in the forest near our kampong, all that. So the other thing is that we try to increase these numbers of trees, and then we will actually monitor it. At the end, we will work with the forest department, to give us some right, even though under our Akta Orang Asli, we consider whatever area is kawasan orang asli, but of course, under the National Land Code, they will say this is still the forest reserve for the Tanah Kerajaan. So we will work with this forest department to give us something that right to take care and manage this particular area. Then we'll go back to echo with what Dr. Renard said. We will try to promote or generate income for this with the program of ecotourism later on. You see, ecotourism, when you have the all fruit, young trees, everything, people want to see, People want to see how is perah look like. People want to see how kampoi look like, all that. And when there is come the season, then we can invite people to have tried it. Of course, not free lah, with some listen to because we need that fund to actually maintain that particular area or that at the same time actually benefit to everybody. So it's all about win-win situation. So jungle or forest will rehabilitate, the kampung people can get job, the NGO can get the name for it, and then income to everybody win. So it can generate the ecotourism program, so all that. I think this is what we are doing now and we are going to do, and we try to expand this program to whichever kampong that interested. That's actually what we are doing. The other thing, I think other NGOs also doing it actually in the town. I'm a town planner by profession, just now. So I'm a town planner because even though I'm talking a lot about these people, my daily life actually I'm practicing town planner. So under the built environment, I think the Renard more well on this. Also promoting on this low carbon city, right? I've heard of low carbon city. The idea is that to mitigate, to reduce the emission of green gas. So how we do that actually? In the carbon low carbon city to encourage the use of now is a trend already going to be a trend already EV later on use of electrical vehicle, promote the public transport, promote cycling, but you have to have infrastructure all that. So introduce the green building design things. So a lot of things actually this all initiative, all the NGO, but this one actually under my NGO, Malaysian Institute of Plan are doing it. I believe others NGO also doing it. So I think all this initiative by NGOs, either from the indigenous people, from the environment, construction, everything. I think we have to collaborate together. Everybody must contribute as many as we can. Even from students, you all also can do something from the government agency, doing things, all that. I believe if everybody doing, then we can mitigate. Doctor said our target below 2%, 2 degrees Celsius. Of course, you said 1.5, all that. I hope that we can achieve the thing by 2023, 2030, sorry. So I think this is all initiative that we need to be done, that we have to work together.
I think that's some commendable effort by NGOs and also from your Persatuan Orang Asli itself. I think the public needs to, play their role by supporting whatever an initiative, initiated by those NGOs. Now let's go back to Dr. Renard Siew. A question from Daniel Mirza. Hello, Dr. Renard. How do you think the rapidly growing technologies can coexist with the efforts of mitigating climate change or other environmental issues?
Yeah, once again, a very big question that's packed into that. I think there is a role for technology in trying to facilitate the process of mitigating emissions. One area that we have seen that has grown a lot is in what we call direct air capture, right? Or carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. It's this whole idea that you have this tank basically absorbing a lot of the carbon in the air, and then you want to be able to utilize, right, or store some of this carbon below ground. And some technologies like that are being piloted. You can see one case study called the Northern Lights project around Norway, which is already taking place. It's one of the largest CCUS project that is happening right now, and a lot of parties are basically looking at that as a de facto project to see how that evolves, right? Because if it's successful, then you will see a lot of a domino effect that's basically taking place. But one of the key issues here is that it's very, very costly to implement carbon capture technology at this point in time. So that's one. And then on more of the livelihoods, right, when we talk about climate adaptation, in the agriculture sector specifically, people are looking at things like precision agriculture. So they are so precise. They're able to know, right, the acidity of the soil, how much water and sunlight that is required, right, for the crops to grow at its very optimum. and they are looking at things like vertical farming, right? So in order to address issues around land scarcity, also one of the common themes that we have addressed today, we're saying that, hey, you know, we're using a lot of land for development, right? So there's this issue of scarcity of land. So people are then thinking, hey, perhaps there are innovative ways of dealing with this. And one way is perhaps to plant upwards vertically instead of horizontally, right? Which takes up more space. And vertical farming has basically taken off, like even in this region. So they're able to, you know, people, entrepreneurs are able to manipulate, right, all of these different parameters in order for crops to grow at its most optimum. And then, of course, in the built environment industry, you're seeing that there's a little bit more efficiency being built, right, in terms from an energy perspective. In some ways, people are designing, right, for more natural lighting because that reduces dependency on the use of air condition, for example, or lighting, right, light senses. So you're seeing all of this growing, cutting across multiple areas. The future, you know, of this would be AI or robotics, right? There have been conversations currently, rightly or wrongly, about how the future of farms would completely be operated by drones and robots at the control, the click of just someone's fingertips, right? And of course, this could be quite contentious. Like one of the conversations that have evolved out of that is, what about people's jobs, right? Things like job security. People still need to feed their families. Will they run out of jobs or completely be replaced by such robots? We don't have, you know, a right or wrong answer. What we do know is that this technologies exist, you know, and at the end of the day, it really boils back down to proper judgment, you know, like proper consideration. You need to have conversations with
Doctor, your audio is not. Yeah.
Is at the end of the day for the benefit of communities.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's really fascinating how technologies can coexist with the climate change that is occurring. But I think it all goes back to how, like you said, how we comprehend, how we really take into consideration, some of these marginalized people, or like other stakeholders as well. But those are some of mesmerizing, innovative technologies. Now, there's a question from Putri Sherry. Good morning. There is a program called Eco Schools, which promotes schools to adopt sustainable practices. My question is, how can tertiary education levels adopt sustainability? I give the floor to any one of you. Perhaps
Dato. I to respond first because I'm the one who really promote about this early education program. So because I believe that the values, human values, play important role in the particular issue about environment. Of course, we have two types of solution for this environment. One is nature-based solution. The other one, just like Dr. said, is technology-based solution. But I think whatever it is, we start with the human, our natural-based solution. Because even to apply the technology must be operated by the human. So the early education, tertiary education is very, very important to me for the awareness. Because not only, of course, to talk when you want to educate your child, the parent also must be aware. I mean, must be have the understanding. So, to me, environmental subject should be started as early as in the kindergarten. It should be a subject. It should be a curriculum. It should be a toy with regard, because early education, they like to play with the toys, all that. So I remember one initiative by this MK group, through this our indigenous people in Tasik Banding. So there is one our tribe there, the Jahai tribe. They live in the forest area there. You have to take boat from JT Tasik Banding to their kampung. Probably you need almost like 2 hours. So of course, most of them didn't go to school, all that. But I like the initiative because by this MK group, they give exposure to these people through the education. How we do it actually? I'm not about environment. How they do it? Actually, they are playing with. They call it the toys uh, education. It actually they teach. Of course, they don't have basic about education all that. So they play with toys as a tool to educate the people. So I think we can also do that the same thing in our early education program. You see, play with the toys. So I agree with the person that answered the question, the thing that we actually need to start this particular awareness from the early days of our life, you see, especially from as early as at the kindergarten or preschool, whatever you call it, it's very important, So I think that should be the good start for our future.
So Dato, what you are emphasizing on is it should be compulsory, right? The subject of environmental. Okay, that's a point of view from Dato. Now let's hear from Dr. Renard. Perhaps you could add some, insights to that.
I think the current generation right now, is a bit more woke. So, they truly believe that environmental conservation, preservation, right, is something that, they have to fight for, right? The previous generation, as what we have discussed with Dato earlier, was that a lot of us probably only learn about this, right? Like halfway through, like our journeys, our lives, and then realizing that, hey, we live in a world that is really so messed up. There's so, like many catastrophes that have happened, and we have to do something now. But there's a real opportunity in really starting to educate, right, primary school students and making sure that our curriculum is structured in such a way whereby it builds up on one another, right? So from primary to secondary all the way to tertiary education, I personally feel that there should be some sort of mandatory, right, course where it's not just hate knowledge but also practical application, right? Contextual information that you've learned about your localities, and then also have like like real projects on the ground that you're doing that actually adds value to things like biodiversity. Because hate knowledge, right, doesn't help. I think just knowing is not enough. You have to do it, right? And that's where most people are stuck at. Even when we talk about consumers that we have today, a lot of them actually do know that have a good fair knowledge about what happens when you just dump your garbage everywhere, as you like. It leads to pollution. But do they really act responsibly? Responsibly. I think that's really the key here. You know, and I think, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's education. Education, hate knowledge is not enough. We need real, concrete, grassroots action.
True. It's interesting when you mention about how the previous generation were not aware of what happened to our environment. I think I'm gonna relate it to how our media works. I think previously the awareness was not really raised by the media, but now with the existence of a lot of social media platforms and other media platforms, I think the awareness is has already been spread. So that's about it for our Q&A session. Now, to our distinguished speakers, could you provide us with your concluding remarks? What is your hope for Malaysians in ensuring that our environment is well protected? Perhaps you could offer some additional insights as well. Perhaps we could start with Dato first.
Yeah, I'm quite passionate about environment because, as I told you earlier, that our community the first one to be exposed with all this. Some people call natural disaster, but I did with doctors and doctors topic. Actually, this not just disaster. It's some of it is a man-made. So as I always stress from the beginning, I think is public awareness and engagement is a very crucial thing because we can have a very good policy, we can have a very good guideline, we can have a very good project. But if the people didn't really support it, didn't implement it, it's actually all initiatives must come with action. Without action, proper action, all that, we will not get the good result. So public awareness, commitment, the important, the responsibility, the accountability to the environment is very, very important and crucial thing. The other thing is that actually, of course, all these initiatives, as I mentioned earlier, I can wrap up the thing with actually whatever it is, work by NGO, work by this. I'm representing MFF and this one because MFF I also doing something to do in this REDD. I mentioned that we are in the process of doing a pilot project on this rehabilitation on the forest reserve in Sungai Bersih. You see, why MFF can do that? Because MFF will support fund from the government. So from the government initiative, it's very good actually, but we want more. We want more not only from MFF, NPCC, other agencies, so many agencies actually, and then support from GLC, all the listed company, especially with the ESG, compulsory now, all that actually. We need to consolidate all these resources. You must be certain percentage from your budget for the environment, for the sustainability, for the good governance. Because what? If you focus only on the economic growth without talking about sustainability, without talking about, at the end, that's all you have to spend more on this environment. And because you spoil the thing. I want to really back. Actually, start with a special program. Of course, from the beginning, I always said you must have resources. So the agency, the company, the government must allocate certain resources, certain funds for this particular. At the end, I believe that it will not as costly as if you do it at the end when the disaster is already happened. So the other thing is that, of course, with all this, you need the commitment, political will from our leader, actually. Leader meaning it's either from political, from the bosses of all the listed company, from the NGO, from whatever it is, the leader play important role. You see, leader must educate or encourage the member, the public, whatever it is, to be more concerned about this. And I always stress that must have a good governance. Don't show things just because of the name, but you do it sincerely for the good, for the benefit of the people and the nation. That is very important. Of course, the other thing is that I always mention that, environment is not that Malaysia can control only. When Jerabu come from this one, actually we said it's not from us. So it's international collaboration, global collaboration is very, very important. So our Malaysian government must use whatever platform, either in Asia, in all of the nation, all that. I think that's what they are doing now. So consultation, engagement to the people, with the people, and I always said, I want to close up with it. From part of Indian people, don't forget FPIC is all about the transparency, sincerity, and the commitment of you doing things for the good of the people in the nation.
Okay, that's a concluding remark by Dato Suki. Now let's hear from Dr. Renard.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dato had already very clearly summarized a lot of our key points. I would probably just add that, you know, for every crisis, there is an opportunity. Even as we face, you know, climate challenges, even as we go through floods, droughts, you know, decline in things like crop yields, you know, one of the things that I really take pride in is that as mankind, we have an opportunity, right, to find innovative ways to be resilient, to continue to sustain ourselves. And that comes through, you know, different innovative technologies and the way that, you know, policies are being drafted and the way that we govern. Innovation really needs to cut across, right, multiple areas. And what gives me hope is actually the younger people, right? You know, from all facets. Um, you know, we started off the conversation talking about how important, right, the role of the media is, right, in trying to highlight, you know, this issues to the public, right. But your end goal, like your end game, is really, you know, like to also see if you can facilitate and not just shape public opinion, but for them to be inspired enough, right, to take action on areas that have been neglected. But to do this, you know, you must not confine yourself to only people that you know. You have to break out of that comfort zone, right? You know, Dato, we spoke about how important it is to include, right, the voices of different stakeholders, different communities. And what that also means is that you have to be empathetic, you know, like to join them, to see what their pain points are, right, to leaf through that, to be able to convey something to the public that is impactful, right, and inspiring. So there is a lot of work still that needs to be done. You know, we have to engage with policymakers, civil society organizations, citizens, agencies, think tanks, academia, you know, in order to really move the needle. The journey is as long and tedious and tiring, but I hope that you'll be able to find support in all of that, to set up your own network, to find a voice, to amplify someone's voice throughout this journey, and it will be a fulfilling one, I would think.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's a really good insight from Doctor. I think let me emphasize this again. No matter how much fund allocated, no matter how many programs organized or mitigation measures are prepared, if we don't gain the support by the public or like different communities and stakeholders, I think at the end of the day it's useless. Now that's a really enlightening discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw near to the end of this remarkable event, I would like to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for attending our event today. We also extend our deepest gratitude to both of our speakers, Dr. Renard Siew and YBhg Dato Suki, whose profound insights have enlightened us and sparked meaningful discussions for today's colloquium. Let us carry forward the insights shared today by both of them and use those insights as a catalyst for change, especially for our environment. Together, we can make a positive impact and create a better future for ourselves and the upcoming generations. Ladies and gentlemen, before we disperse, I would like to invite everyone to turn on their cameras for group photos. So everyone, you may turn on your cameras and smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. All right, that's for our photo session. Now, I'm sorry, everyone, if there's any inconvenience caused. Thank you, everyone, for participating and engaging in our discussion today. Till we meet again, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dato and Doctor.